Hi, I'm Tony Alicea, and I am so excited to announce the release of a complete brand new course. It's called Team Dynamics and Soft Skills for Developers. I, for a decade now, have been teaching people technology, helping people become coders or be the best coder they can be. But I've long felt there's a missing piece of dev education. Whether you're learning online or in a school or in a boot camp, you learn to code, but your day-to-day work is with people. It's working in a team in a coding environment. That is a skill that you may be learning the hard way. I wanted to bring my 25 years of experience as a developer, a user experience designer, as a manager, and mentor you on this problem. So in this video, I want to show you a bit about the course, but I'll also give you some of my favorite tips along the way. For starters, you can go to teamdynamics.dev and get the course at an affordable price. Now, what do we talk about in the course? For one thing, we talk about some of the basic human needs that, when fulfilled, will make for a positive team experience. For example, one of those basic human needs is agency, which means that you're able to make decisions, take initiative. You have some empowerment, some freedom, some autonomy over your own actions, and you feel some control over what you're doing day to day. In any team, there are boundaries, kind of like living inside a box. You have responsibilities that are yours, and there are responsibilities that belong to others. But the more rules are added inside the box, the more lines you can't cross, the more the box starts to look like a maze. It can be difficult to navigate the team structure. We can find ourselves hitting a lot of dead ends and ending in frustration. And that's because in those environments, we don't have agency. We'll talk about this and other core concepts and then use them to describe how we can have well-functioning teams and how you can contribute to a well-functioning team as a dev and have good team dynamics and soft skills with others, both as a dev and as a manager. We'll also lay a framework for understanding how people respond to what you do and say. We'll talk about how there's different inputs, not all of which we may be aware of, when we are communicating with our fellow developers, which is why a response may be surprising. Perhaps, for example, some past experiences color a dev's opinion, or perhaps a negative or positive self-belief, which we challenge the positive or we reinforce the negative, might result in a negative response. Whatever the case is, we may be providing information, but those other inputs that we're unaware of may result in a surprisingly negative or destructive response. We'll take this framework and we'll apply it to what I call various states. I don't like to say types because types means people can't change. So I say developer, designer, and manager states. States of mind that people can be in or believe that they're in. And then we'll use that framework to understand how we can have our best interactions with them, and even how we can help people and ourselves transition out of states that may be dangerous in a dev team. We'll talk about developer states that I call the newbie, the overconfident intermediate, the imposter, the been around a while, the loner genius, and the mentor. We'll also talk about designer states for our designers on the team. I call them the starving artist, the pseudo-dev, and the expert. And managers are people too. We'll talk about the former dev manager, the non-technical, the worth prover, and the leader. In all of these cases, we'll look at how we can apply our framework to have the best, most constructive interactions as possible, improving our team dynamics, our interactions with each other as a team. I'll also give concrete tips about communication. There's so many forms of communication on a dev team, whether it's email, direct message, or even our code itself and code reviews. For example, when talking about direct messages, I say, don't just say, hey, allow people to prioritize. When you start a message and just say, hey, or hello, or hi, and nothing else, understand that people have a lot of input and distraction, many messages, emails, a phone call, a video conference, whatever the case is. When we just say one word, hey, What we're really doing is not giving information so that the person can prioritize. We're removing their agency. And that can be frustrating and annoying for that person. Instead, we can find ways to succinctly give the information and politely requesting their attention, but allowing them the agency of deciding if what we're saying has higher priority over other messages that they're receiving. Don't just give a one-word hey when you're sending a direct message to someone. We'll talk about more tips on all these different forms of communication. Now, what if you come to manage devs? Well, we'll talk about tips for that too. For example, if you're trying to get a dev team to do something, to make some kind of change, well, think about the fact that they spend their entire day solving problems. Devs are in problem-solving mode all the time. So, whatever it is you're trying to, as a manager, help your team to accomplish, ask yourself, how can I express what needs to be done as a problem to be solved? For example, if you need them to report their time spent on a project by the end of the week, and that's just not happening, we can ask the dev team. A problem that we have is, in order to bill on time, we need to know how much work was done. How can we make sure we know that at the end of each week? Now, the suggestions the dev team gives may or may not be something you can implement, but sometimes a great idea might come along. Either way, instead of it being a critique of the team, the devs that are already in problem-solving mode, I often find are more readily accepting of adjustments that are needed if it's all part of a debug session, essentially. We'll also talk about team crisis. When the team is under duress, maybe there's a big bug in production. That can be a challenge to our soft skills and can negatively impact our team dynamics while that problem is going on. For example, one tip is to not be shocked that software has a bug. Software is hard. Now, that doesn't mean we don't validate the feelings of those affected by the problem. But internally, within the team, we understand that this is normal. What we want to do is solve the problem and then figure out how to adjust our processes to help the problem be more difficult to occur in the future. But it's not shocking that problems occur. Software is hard. And if all the team members understand that and work to prevent reoccurrence, that can lower the temperature when there's a problem, and we can all work together to solve it. The last thing we'll talk about in this course is your view of yourself, the team member you have the most influence over. One thing I talk about is when you join a company, making sure your sense of self is good and healthy. Being hired does not give you value. Instead, you bring your value to the company. If you can have that mindset, it will give you a more measured approach and response to the interactions that you have with your team in that company. And it will help you, if you choose to or find yourself having to, move on from that team or company. If you see yourself as having value and potential and you bring it to that company or to that team, you'll have healthier team dynamics, at least in my experience. So for the full course, head over to teamdynamics.dev. This is a course that I've been really wanting to put out there. And I hope after 10 years of teaching others how to code and how to understand under the hood what's going on, I can help you have a better day-to-day experience with your team, be a better team member, a better team manager, and have more successful communication and less stress in your work, whether as a dev or a manager, by thinking about people, others, and yourself, and applying those lessons to the environment of a lot of people writing code. So I hope to see you in the course. Happy coding, and I hope you and your team have a great time making great software.